Hi, and welcome to Stamp with Ginny. Today I'm going to share with you this fun easel card, perfect for that woodworker in our lives. I made this card using the vintage tool stamp set that you can find in our annual catalog. So let me set this aside and I'll show you how to get started. Okay, I'm going to start with the stamping for this card. So I'm going to bring in my It's Your Day in my soft suede, ink it up, and stamp. There we go. Okay, I'm going to start with my first tool here. I'm going to stamp that carefully, being careful not to rock, and I'm going to stamp the little tacks. Well, let's see, I'll put one there. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in my pliers, ink that up, and stamp, and my clamp. There we go. Next, I'm going to bring in this rectangular panel and my sentiment. I'm going to ink that up in the early espresso and stamp. And then I'm going to pop a few images around here under the sentiment. And I'm going to use the chisel here on the right. And I'm going to ink the hammer here for on the left. Okay, I've got my stamping done and I'm ready to get my items ready for assembly. But before I do that, I want to bring some sponging in. I'm going to use my blends here. I'm going to pick up that ink and I'm going to tap it on my block. What that does is simply keep my space a little cleaner, and it allows me to pick up that ink again when I need it on the clear block. And I'm simply going to do some swirls as I go around the outside edge. What this does is kind of make it a vintage feel. And tap, and I'm also going to do that around my tool pieces, just lightly. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can add some darker in the areas that don't have stamping and lighter in the areas close to the tool if you would like. This just gives it a more antique or vintage feel, since the tools themselves are vintage type tools. There we go. I've got that done, and my last thing is going to be to add a little bit of blending onto my sentiment piece and bring in my paper snips, and I'm going to trim this on the right and left down to the length I'd like it. Let's see, about there. And then I'm going to take my paper snips and I'm going to snip in and create a banner. And that's why I sponged or blended the cardstock with ink prior to using my paper snips. It allowed me to get this nice smooth look and still have a little bit of softness there. Okay, to start the easel card, we're going to start by building the base. I'm going to place the sentiment here onto the basic black panel, and my designer series paper onto the basic black. I've punched out of that layer before, so I want to make sure I don't add adhesive on the top there. Okay, I've got those pieces done. And I'm going to bring in my basic black cardstock and my punch, and I'm going to punch out 3 rectangles here using my postage stamp punch. And I'm going to layer these tools onto that rectangle. I'm going to add the adhesive to all 3 of these right now since they're small pieces. Next, I'm going to bring in my 2 panels that I've embossed with my Timber 3D embossing folder, and I'm simply going to pick up some more of that ink, tap, and run it around the outside edge just to make that grain pop. This folder is simply beautiful with its richness and works so wonderfully with this woodworking stamp set. You can pick up that ink from the block also if you would like. and just lightly go around those edges. There we go. I've got my blending done on the edges, so we're ready to start putting everything together. I'm going to take my first panel and I'm going to adhere it down to my basic black. I'm using the multi-purpose glue for this because of the texture on the wood. You want that adhesive to seep in and fill those gaps up nicely. Next, I'm going to take my designer series piece of paper that is layered onto the basic black and place that in the center. Now for this, since it's an easel card, I'm going to place it up slightly higher than the center. And then I'm going to bring in my tools here. I'm going to flip them over and add dimensionals. I'm going to use my minis here because they'll tuck up into these little corners. If you want a more firm feel, you can put some in the center also. And while I'm at it, I'm going to put some on the back of the sentiment. Okay, now that I have that done, I'll remove the backings. And with those backings removed, I'm ready to start. So I'm going to use this first piece here and place it right in the center of this panel. There we go. You can use the lines to help you if you'd like. I'm going to take this next one and hang it off the outside edge a little bit, and same with this one. See, I want to make sure these gaps are about the same. So there we go. And then for my sentiment panel, I want to take that and run it right down the center. And since it's popped up, it'll give it a little bit of interest. I'm going to set that aside and bring over my card base now. I've got this card base. It's scored at the regular 4 1/4, but it's also scored at 2 1/4, separating these two panels. So the first thing I want to do is place this down here. And once again, I'm using that liquid because I want that texture to hold nicely. And then I'm going to take this finished panel and I'm going to adhere it to the top, but I'm only going to adhere this section. Now, if you would prefer, Stampin' Seal and or tear and tape is great for this kind of project because they're nice and strong. I want to line up those edges well and give that a second to adhere. And while that is drying, I'm going to bring in my panel down here and add it to the bottom. So I'm going to flip that over, and let's see, I think I'm going to use my large dimensionals for this because I want it to be substantial and really pop up and hold its position. And these will give me a little more coverage on this long panel. Remove the backings, flip it over, and adhere it in place. And it's about even from the bottom and the sides. Now that I have that in place, I'm ready to add a little bit of bling to my project. I'm going to bring in my rustic metallic adhesive back dots and my Take Your Pick tool, and I'm simply going to pop some of these onto my project just to add a little bit of texture and interest in addition to texture. Let's see, I'm going to add one over here, and I think one next to the hammer right there. There we go. I think you're really going to love these little rustic metallic dots. They're just this beautiful color with patina that works wonderfully with this set. So now that I have my project all adhered and I have given it time to dry, I'm going to take this top panel, bend it back on that score line, and use my bone folder And then I'm going to fold this one forward and use my bone folder. And of course, if you would prefer to do this before you assemble the whole thing, you can, making it a little easier to fold and score. And there you go, this beautiful EASEL card, perfect for that gentleman's desk. And I love the fact that it folds flat, ready for mailing. Of course, if you'd like any of these products, feel free to stop by my online store. You can get there from my blog, Stamp with Jini. Thanks for joining me.